The lunch rush at the Caldwell branch of Calloway Kitchen Group had been building since 11. By 20 past noon, every booth along the south wall was taken, the counter stools were full, and the host stand had a clipboard with 14 names on it. The air smelled of griddle butter and coffee that had been sitting too long, and somewhere near the kitchen pass-through, a buspan dropped, and nobody flinched, because this was that kind of Tuesday. Table 6 didn't fit, not in any way Derek Holt could justify. A man in his mid-40s sat across from a girl who looked about 9. He wore a faded canvas work jacket over a plain gray shirt, and he had a cup of coffee going cold beside a small, worn notebook. He was writing in it with the focused quiet of someone working through a problem nobody else in the room could see. The girl had a book open in front of her, something about birds, but she hadn't turned a page in the 20 minutes since they sat down. Derek had been watching them from the register. He had run this location for 2 years. He knew the metrics by heart. Table turn rate, comp ratio, revenue per seat hour, waste as a percentage of gross. Those numbers had improved since he took over. The spreadsheets said so. And spreadsheets, Derek had come to believe, were a more honest account of a restaurant than the room itself. He crossed the dining floor and stopped beside table 6. "Sir," he kept his voice low, professionally neutral, the voice he used when he needed to be heard without being overheard. "We have a wait. If you're not planning to order, I'd appreciate it if you could free up the booth." The man looked up from his notebook. He didn't seem startled. His eyes were steady in a way that made Derek feel, briefly, like he had walked up to the wrong table. "We'll order," the man said. "If you already know what you want, we'll order," he said again, and looked back at his notebook. If you already feel it, that tightening in your chest, hit the like button and subscribe to Hidden Ledger. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from, because this story is just getting started. And the part they don't see coming? Keep watching. The man's name was Marcus Calloway. He was 44 years old, and his name was on the door of 47 restaurants, though you would never know it to look at him. He had built the first Calloway Kitchen in Tupelo, Mississippi, 11 years before, in a converted gas station with 12 seats and a single flat-top grill that ran hot on the right side. He had named it for his late wife, June, who had died of cancer when their daughter was 3 years old, leaving him with a 4-page recipe notebook, a $17,000 life insurance payout, a mortgage in both their names, and a little girl named Lily, who called out for her mother in the night for the better part of a year. June had been the one who could cook. Marcus had been the one who could manage labor schedules, inventory, a profit and loss that made sense, and after the funeral, after the first season of trying to figure out what shape his life was supposed to take now, he had done the only thing that felt like solid ground. He took June's recipes and June's name and the money from her insurance, and he built the place she had always said she wanted, a diner, the kind where the food tasted like someone gave it thought. He ran it himself for the first 3 years, cooked when the cook didn't show, seated tables when the host quit, went home to Lily each night smelling of the grill. The 4th year, he opened a second location. The 5th, a third. By year 7, there were 14 Calloway kitchens. Now there were 47, across 6 states in the Southeast, running under regional managers and a VP of operations named Diane, who had been with him since location 4. Marcus still drove an 11-year-old pickup. He still visited his restaurants anonymously, rotating locations, once a month at minimum. He sat in booths and ordered off the menu, and watched what happened when nobody believed the owner was in the room. He had learned more about his business this way than from any report Diane had ever sent him. He always carried June's recipe card in his breast pocket, laminated now, the edges soft from handling. He had the recipe memorized. He carried the card because it was the one thing of hers that still felt warm. Today he had Lily with him because her school had called a half day for teacher training, and her usual Tuesday arrangement had fallen through. Lily had been coming on inspection visits since she was 6. She understood the exercise without needing it explained. She brought a book. She sat quietly. She did not call him Dad in the restaurant. He had chosen the Caldwell branch because Diane's quarterly numbers had flagged it. Revenue was holding, but the customer return rate had dropped 9 points over 2 years, and the comp ratio, the percentage of meals discounted or given away as goodwill, had gone nearly to 0, which sounded like good news. In a certain kind of restaurant, it wasn't. A zero comp rate meant nobody was being helped when something went wrong. Nobody's order was arriving late with a genuine apology. Nobody's coffee was going cold without someone catching it. It meant the room was being managed like a machine set to minimum friction. Machines set to minimum friction, in Marcus's experience, produced minimum warmth. And warmth was the entire business model. He had sat down with his notebook and his coffee and started writing. The woman working the south section was named Rosa. She had been doing this job for a long time and had made a decision, somewhere along the way, to do it with care rather than just speed. She brought Lily a coloring page without being asked, slid it across the table with a small box of crayons she'd pulled from the host stand, said only in case the book needs a break, before moving to the next table. She refilled Marcus's coffee without him flagging her. When a booth behind them sent her back with a complicated modification, she absorbed it without writing anything down and got it right. Marcus watched the room through the corner of his vision while he wrote. The way the bus staff were moving, hurried, no acknowledgement from management. The host stand, understaffed for the volume of the room. The kitchen pass-through, where plates were sitting longer than they should before anyone picked them up. He noted the pass-through. He noted the bus staff. He had been here 40 minutes, and he had 3 pages of observations. Lily had looked up from her bird book twice. Both times, she had been watching Derek Holt. He does that thing, she said quietly, not pointing, just speaking in the low voice they both used inside these rooms. What thing? Where he talks to people and they get smaller. Marcus looked across the dining room. Derek was redirecting a young server near the host stand. The server's shoulders drew in while Derek spoke. They came back up when he walked away, but only partway. Marcus wrote another note. He ordered when Rosa returned. A full breakfast plate. He always ordered full meals, because you could not evaluate a kitchen on coffee alone. Lily ordered pancakes. Rosa had the order at the pass-through in under 90 seconds. His phone buzzed while they waited. A text from Diane, confirmed Thursday. Caldwell on the agenda. Monthly comp report shows 0. Is that right? He typed back. Already here. Give me until end of day. He set the phone face down. A woman at the table beside them was trying to catch Rosa's eye. Rosa was carrying a full tray to the back booth, but she registered the signal and changed course to check in before the woman had to wait. Marcus noted this. It wasn't something you trained into a person. You either hired for it, or you ground it out of them over time, and then you wondered why your return rate was down 9 points. He also noticed that when Rosa passed Derek near the register, there was a subtle thing in her posture, a practiced non-response, the kind of person develops when they have learned to make themselves smaller inside a specific someone's eyeline. Not quite fear. Preemptive armor. 11 years with the company. She was navigating her manager like a weather pattern she had learned to work around rather than through. He wrote that down. At some point during the rush, Rosa said something to the couple behind them, a young family, first visit by the look of them, uncertain about the menu, that Marcus caught the edge of. She mentioned something specific about the soup, a single ingredient, the reason it worked the way it did that day. The couple relaxed. It was not a script. It was not a rehearsed upsell. It was the thing a person says when they have eaten the food themselves and paid attention to what made it worth coming back for. Marcus wrote 3 words in his notebook. She knows this. Then a 4th word. Better. Meaning better than most people running rooms like this one. Meaning better than whoever was making decisions about whose judgment was worth trusting with the floor. There was one small crack in the concealment. When Rosa topped off Marcus's coffee for the 3rd time, she paused. She looked at his notebook, not reading it, not intruding, just noticing it. She said, "You come here a lot?" "First time," Marcus said. She nodded. Something in her expression suggested she was not entirely sure she believed him, but she moved on. A small crack. Careful observers would have known to stop and look. Derek was not a careful observer. He was a certain one. They are not the same thing. The food came out correctly. The eggs were done right. Lily's pancakes were from June's original recipe. The one with the buttermilk, the small measure of vanilla. And for a moment, the smell of them was something Marcus had to consciously set aside so he could keep working. He ate. He made notes. He watched the room turn over around them. When Rosa brought the check, Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He had a debit card he rarely used. Personal account, not his business accounts, not the card he usually carried, and he handed it over without thinking twice. Rosa ran it at the handheld terminal. It came back declined. He stared at it for a moment. He knew exactly why. Diane had moved a transfer out of that account 2 days ago to cover a facilities invoice, and he had forgotten to replace the balance. The kind of administrative collision that happened when you didn't watch the account you used the least. "I'm sorry," he said. "I can reach my office. This gets sorted in a few minutes." Rosa nodded. "Take your time." She moved to another table. What Marcus did not see was Rosa stepping to the register and placing her own card against the reader for their tab. $31 and change, plus what she had already set aside in the tip pool. She had done this before, for other tables. She had been written up for it twice. She did it anyway. What Derek saw was his server running an unauthorized comp during the lunch rush. He crossed the room and intercepted her at the register. Marcus could not hear the exchange from table 6, but the body language required no translation. Derek's back was to the dining room. Rosa's chin stayed level. She said something. Derek said something back. There was a pause in which nothing moved the way it should have. She returned to the floor. Then Derek came to table 6. He stood beside the booth. He did not pull a chair. He looked at Marcus with the expression of a man who had a tight window for this and had decided to use it efficiently. "Sir, we have parties waiting. I'm going to need you to settle up, or I'd ask that you step to the counter while we sort out your payment situation." The words moved through the dining room, the way words move when they are not quite loud enough to be public and not quiet enough to be private. The table behind them went still. Gus, a man in his 60s who came in every Tuesday for the soup and had been doing so for 4 years, had stopped midway through a bite and set his spoon down. Lily did not look up from her book, but she had stopped reading. Marcus looked at Derek. He did not raise his voice. He did not produce a clarifying explanation. He said, with the even absence of urgency that was its own kind of language, "She's had a long morning." Derek did not change his expression. "The counter is just as comfortable. We'll get it sorted and you can come back to a booth when one opens." He said come back to a booth the way you say, "Let us know if anything changes at the end of a call you have already decided to end." Lily put her book down. She looked at Marcus. She wasn't asking him to do anything. She was watching to see what he would do. Marcus closed his notebook. He began to stand. Rosa was there before he was fully upright. She set 2 plates down on the table, his breakfast, Lily's pancakes, and she said it clearly, looking at Derek while she said it, not performing anything, just stating the fact. "On me." Derek's jaw moved once. He turned and walked toward the register. His posture said he was done with the table. His posture also said something else, which Rosa already knew how to read. Marcus sat back down. Lily looked at the pancakes. She looked at the kitchen door Rosa had disappeared through. "Is she going to get in trouble?" Lily asked. "Probably," Marcus said. "Because she helped us?" He looked at his daughter. "Because the person running this room has decided that help costs too much." Lily picked up her fork. She thought about this for a moment. Then she said, without any particular emphasis, "That's wrong." It wasn't a question. Marcus ate and watched the room with his notebook closed in front of him. He watched Derek move through the space with the efficiency of a man who had optimized the wrong things. Tables turned. Orders moved. The metrics, without pulling a single spreadsheet, were probably adequate. Everything in the room was running at the temperature of something that worked without being worth coming back to. He was thinking about Rosa's 11 years, about the 2 write-ups on her file for the same infraction, which was feeding someone who needed it. He was thinking about the comp rate Diane had flagged. Not dangerously high, but 0. Flat 0. That kind of number only happens when someone has been taught, specifically, that generosity is a liability. And then that lesson gets reinforced until it sticks. If this story found its way to you, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Hidden Ledger posts new stories every week, and the one after this one is already waiting. Your support is what keeps the ledger open. His phone rang. He answered it in his seat, keeping his voice low. It was Diane, calling about the Caldwell site visit, asking whether he needed anything forwarded. "Send me the comp reports," he said. 6 months. A pause. "And pull the personnel file for the general manager." Across the room, Derek had noticed the call. Not the content, the posture. The way a man's weight settles differently when he's talking to someone who matters. Managers learn to read this. Derek was watching Marcus now with a different quality of attention. Marcus ended the call. He put the phone face down. Derek crossed the room. He arrived at table 6 with a receipt already zeroed out and set it on the table between them. "Your meal has been taken care of," he said. His voice carried the careful flatness of someone who had decided graciousness was, at this particular moment, advantageous. "Going forward, if there's a payment concern, we'd just ask that you let your server know up front. Makes it easier for everyone." He said payment concern, the way you say hygiene issue, with enough clinical distance to make it clear he was doing someone a favor by using that particular phrase instead of the one he had in his head. Gus at the counter had not resumed eating. He was watching the booth the way you watch something you recognize, but cannot quite name. 3 tables along the south wall had gone quieter than the ambient noise of the room warranted. Lily looked up at Derek. She did not say anything. She did not need to. She was 9, and she had the clear, uncomplicated gaze of someone who had not yet learned that looking directly at people was socially complicated. She simply looked at him. Derek found this uncomfortable in a way he couldn't locate precisely. He turned slightly away. Marcus picked up his pen. He opened his notebook to a clean page. He wrote one thing on it. He closed the notebook. He reached into the breast pocket of his canvas jacket, behind the laminated card, and removed a second card. Plain white. No logo. No design element. Just text. He set it face up on the table between himself and Derek, and he did not say anything. Derek looked at the card. The name on the card was the name on the lease for this building. The name on the payroll system that cut Rose's checks every 2 weeks. The name above the door and the logo out front, in the same clean font it had carried since a converted gas station in Tupelo, Mississippi, 11 years before. Derek read it once. He read it again. His eyes went from the card to the logo visible through the front windows, then back to the card, then to Marcus. Marcus's phone rang. He picked it up. Diane. His voice was identical to every other version of it that morning. Even, clear, nothing added to it, and nothing taken away. "I'm still at Caldwell. Send the comp reports for the last 6 months." A pause. "And pull the personnel file for the general manager." He looked at Derek while he said that last sentence. Without anger, without satisfaction, with the same steady attention he had been giving the whole room since he sat down. "I'll call you back," he said, and ended the call. Derek had gone very still. There was a specific quality to his stillness. Not composure, but the stillness of a man who has suddenly understood that every confident decision he made in the last 2 hours was a decision someone watched him make and wrote down. All of it, the booth, the counter, the words payment concern said in the middle of a dining room to a man and his daughter. "The comp authorization cap you set for your servers," Marcus said. "Who approved that policy?" Derek could not answer, because the answer was that no one had. He had implemented it as a verbal directive in a team meeting 14 months ago. There was no documentation, no sign-off from anyone above him. There was nothing, officially, except 2 written warnings in a server's file for the act of feeding people who needed it. "I appreciate you handling the receipt," Marcus said. "My office will settle the balance." He stood. He gathered his notebook and his jacket. "Don't adjust your schedule for Thursday. The review is going forward as planned." He picked up the card from the table and held it for one moment, then set it back down. He left it there. Lily stood beside him. She gave Derek one last look, the same clear, uncomplicated look she had held since the beginning. And then she followed her father across the dining room. They found Rosa near the host station. Marcus did not give her a speech. He did not explain what had just happened, though she would understand it soon enough. He held out a plain white card, the other kind, with his personal number written by hand on the back. "Thursday," he said. "There's a review meeting. I'd like you in the room." Rosa looked at the card. She looked at him. "You've been here 11 years, Marcus said. "That kind of long with a company either means you stopped trying, or it means you believed in something. I can tell which one it is." He nodded once. He and Lily walked out into the flat midday light of a Tuesday. At the counter, Gus picked up his spoon. He looked at his soup. He looked at the door. He set the spoon down again and sat with his hands on the counter for a long moment, not eating, in the way of someone who has just understood something about themselves they would rather not have understood. Thursday's review did not look like a reckoning from the outside. No raised voices. Marcus arrived at 9 in the morning with Diane and 2 regional operations leads. and they gathered in the small conference room above the Caldwell location with printed reports and laptops and a tray of coffee someone had picked up on the way in. Derek had spent 2 days preparing. He had charts. He had a narrative about efficiency and process improvement and metric performance across 8 quarters. He had told himself that the card on the table, the phone call, all of it, might not mean exactly what he thought it meant. It meant exactly what he thought it meant. Rosa was in the room, as Marcus had promised. She sat at one end of the conference table with her hands folded in front of her and said very little during the first half of the meeting. She didn't need to. The reading had already been done. The comp restriction was addressed first. Not as a policy, because it had never actually been a policy, had never been approved or documented, had simply been a thing Derek said in a team meeting 14 months ago and nobody pushed back on, because he was the manager. Diane placed the 2 write-ups from Rosa's file on the table. She explained that both were being removed from the record, and she explained why. Both documented acts of service consistent with what Calloway Kitchen Group had always valued, performed at personal cost by an employee with 11 years of tenure, and no formal customer complaints on file. Derek did not argue. He had known, somewhere beneath the spreadsheets, that those write-ups would not survive scrutiny. He had done them anyway, because they were his authority made visible. Marcus spoke for the first time in 20 minutes. "You've made this location more efficient," he said. "The numbers confirm it. The room doesn't." Derek waited. The return rate dropped 9 points while revenue held. Marcus said, "That's a specific pattern. First visit numbers are solid, but you're losing the ones that were going to matter. The people who come in every Tuesday for 11 years and tell their neighbors about it. Those are actually the ones the whole business is built on." The reassignment was announced at the end of the session. Derek Holt would move to a logistics coordination role at the regional office, effective the following week. A position where his genuine aptitude for process and numbers would be used without placing him in a room where he was left to determine, by himself, what warmth was worth. He accepted it without a speech. He thanked the room with the precise, measured courtesy of someone who is maintaining composure through an act of will. He walked out of the Caldwell branch for the last time, as its manager, and nobody in the dining room knew what had changed. They felt it, the way you feel when air pressure shifts before you can see the weather. Rosa was appointed interim general manager that same afternoon. The regional team walked her through the transition protocols. There was no announcement. There was no ceremony. Rosa walked back down from the conference room, tied on her apron, and took the floor she had been running quietly, in the ways that mattered, for 11 years. The write-ups were gone from her file. In their place, a performance commendation for sustained service quality, a bureaucratic entry, a line in a database, but a record that remained. Gus came in the following Tuesday. He always came in on Tuesdays. He sat at the counter and ordered the soup. Rosa brought it to him herself, which was not something a general manager typically did during a full lunch rush. She set it down and refilled his water without asking. Gus looked at the soup. He looked at Rosa. "Heard some things happened last week," he said. "Some things did," she said. He nodded slowly. He picked up his spoon, then set it back down. "I should have said something. When that man came to their table, he kept his eyes on the soup. I sat right here, and I didn't say a word." Rosa considered this for a moment. "You're here now," she said, and moved to the next table. Gus finished his soup. He did some arithmetic on a napkin before he left. He tipped 32%, which Rosa had never seen from him before. He came back the next Tuesday, and the one after that. He always made sure to sit at the counter. The Caldwell branch's customer return rate was up 6 points within 90 days of the transition. The comp ratio came up from 0. Not high, not unmanaged, just to the level of a room where someone had the authority to look at a table and do the human thing. Rosa hired a second server for the lunch shift, a request that had been sitting in the previous manager's inbox, unacted on, for a year and a half. She started eating her lunch in a booth for 20 minutes in the middle of each shift, rather than standing at the host stand. She used the time partly to rest and partly to watch the room the way she had watched Marcus watch it, with a notebook and without urgency, reading what the room said when it thought no one was keeping track. She called the number on the card twice in the first month. Operational questions she could have answered herself, but wanted confirmation on. Marcus picked up both times. At the end of the second call, she said, "I didn't know who you were. I just didn't want the kid to have a bad day." A pause on the line. I know, Marcus said. That's the whole point. The 47th Calloway Kitchen opened in early spring. Marcus attended the opening, the way he attended all of them, without press, without ceremony, by arriving before anyone else and sitting in a booth for half an hour with coffee and his notebook. In his breast pocket, behind the notebook, was the laminated recipe card. 11 years of handling had softened the plastic at the corners. The handwriting inside was still clear. He thought, as he often did in these rooms, about what June would have made of 47 locations. He thought she would have said something practical and something funny in the same sentence, which was a quality he had never quite managed to teach himself. He paid for his coffee. He drove back to Tupelo. Lily was asleep against the window by the time he reached the highway. She had come with him to the opening, had been gracious and quiet, and observed everything with the same attention she brought to the inspection visits. And on the way out, she had told him the eggs were good, but the bacon was a little over. He had written it in his notebook. He drove for a while in the quiet of the early afternoon, the highway running flat between stands of pine, the truck holding steady in the way of old vehicles that have been maintained carefully over a long time. He thought about Rosa. He thought about Gus at the counter with his arithmetic on a napkin. He thought about Derek, who was, according to Diane, managing shipping schedules for the regional office with precision and no complaint. Doing it well, in the way that people sometimes do things well once the position stops requiring them to make themselves larger than the work. He thought about a 9-year-old's voice across a restaurant booth. That's wrong. No qualifier. No softening. Just the clear recognition of a thing, stated by someone too young to have learned yet that truth requires decoration before it can be delivered. He glanced at Lily. She had her mother's face. She had, increasingly, her mother's exactness, the quality of saying the true thing without ceremony, as if truth were simply the efficient choice. At some point she stirred. Dad. Yeah. She looked out the window for a moment. Are we going to eat at a different one next time? He waited. Because I like that one, she said. The pancakes were good. He looked at her. June's recipe, on a laminated card in his breast pocket. The original, from before there were 47 of anything. From before any of this had a name larger than one gas station and one flat-top grill that ran hot on the right side. Yeah, he said. We'll go back. Lily settled against the window again. The truck held the road. The pine stands gave way to open fields and then to pine again. The ledger had been open the whole time. The room just hadn't known whose name was in it. Thank you for staying until the balance was restored. The people who watch to the end are the ones who understand why the ledger matters. If this story stayed with you, the videos on your screen right now are ready to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, the ledger has your name. Hidden Ledger. Every account settles.